you want to get Rashee Rice in these situations where he has a chance to break tackles because that's where he can be really, really dynamic. He's running a lot of just routes concentrated at the line of scrimmage. 50.9% of his charted routes were a screen, a slant, or a flat route.
Wow.
That is not a route tree. That's a route bush.
When you go back and look at the historical database, it feels very Juju Smith-Schuster-ish. It feels very Jarvis Landry-ish when you start talking about, what this guy can do.
If he becomes Jarvis Landry or Juju Smith-Schuster, that's a really good player. Like, that would be awesome.
Look at the release.
There's your separation.
Great route.
Stutter and go. Gets by clean.
That is unbelievable.
Maybe the greatest catch I've ever seen.
We go to Kansas City. Let's talk about Rashee Rice again. If you're checking in with us here, okay, maybe we've clipped this off and we're getting fed into your feed here and you're a Chiefs fan. All right, go to the Reception Perception website. Again, receptionperception.com. You can see the profile there. Okay. I knew, Matt, that Rashee Rice was generally mostly an underneath intermediate guy. I didn't realize when I saw the profile how much that was the case. I mean, just 14% of his entire route participation were on the 9 post and corner. 14%. That is crazy. He did not run deep at all. And to be fair, I mean, I guess when you look at the success rates, I guess it makes a lot of sense because he was not very good, all red on the 9 post corner.
Yeah, to really hammer home, not even just that he wasn't running deep, he's running a lot of just routes concentrated at the line of scrimmage. 50.9% of his charted routes were a screen, a slant, or a flat route.
Wow.
That is not a route tree. That's a route bush, a route shrub, perhaps, is the Rashee Rice tree.
There we go. There we go.
Somebody, not even to me, it was, I think, I can't remember who it was, but somebody had posted a reception perception chart and somebody replied like, yeah, nice Christmas tree, bro, or something like that. This is Rashee Rice's Christmas tree is like the Charlie Brown Christmas tree. It's slanted inwards. It's bending over and slanting inwards. It's very small. That's the Rashee Rice route tree. But I will say, I think this was really a very inspired coaching job by Andy Reid and the rest of the staff there in Kansas City. And, I mentioned this to Rashee Rice at the Super. I mentioned this before, but I asked Rashee Rice at the Super Bowl, when was this sort of like outlined as the plan for you? And he had said that it was really as soon as he was drafted by Coach Reid, he kind of outlined that this was the role that they saw for him. And I just think that's nuts. Going back to his reception perception prospect profile, which if you're familiar with Rashee Rice in reception perception as a prospect, the results were terrible. Okay. First percentile success rate versus man, 7th percentile success rate versus zone. But he was playing in a completely different position than he was in year one in the NFL. 83.6% of his sampled snaps in that prospect profile were on the line of scrimmage. Okay. Excuse me. He was outside for 83.6%. He was on the line of scrimmage for 70.6%. Remember those routes that we just ran off? We just read off what he did from a route perspective. 50.9% screens, flats and slants, all that stuff.
Yeah.
56.1% of his routes were a 9 or curl route in his prospect profile. I mean, you can't get more opposite than that. So again, those are the routes he's running in year one. Right. And meanwhile, from an alignment perspective, he took 47.6% of his sampled snaps in the slot or backfield, and he was only on the line for 56.6%. Usually I would say he was like kind of a boundary flanker, or when he was outside, he was in like bunch formations on the line to help him get away from press man coverage. So that is just, like I said, straight up super inspired coaching job by Andy Reid, super just interesting player deployment job by Andy Reid to take a guy that just wasn't good on film in college, also was playing with an injury and it was injury tainted. I've mentioned that before about that prospect sample, but still, just from a usage and deployment standpoint, completely different role as a rookie with the Chiefs.
Yeah. I just want to at least bring in some of the historical context with this as well. I remember when this profile got released onto the site. I'm talking about Rashee Rice's SMU collegiate profile. And the internet replies were they were not kind to your boy Matt Harmon here, because again, people were saying, oh, you need to fix your process or whatever it might be. You're talking about this guy, first percentile, 45.7% success rate versus man. Can't do it there. Was one of the worst zone beaters in college, football as well. And yet, despite that, this guy had 1,355 yards, 96 receptions, and 10 touchdowns the season that he was charted. And that right there, honestly, Matt, that is reception perception. The difference between the counting stats and the actual, are you beating your man at the line of scrimmage? Are you beating your man at the stem of your route? Are you beating the man at the catch point? That's what reception perception tracks. And I want to say this. Okay? So now the professional first-year rookie profile on Rashee Rice comes out. And I get it. He had a good season. He did, Matt. But let's be real here. The numbers are not that different, dude. You know what I'm saying? It's not as if he just went from, first percentile versus man to just all of a sudden just being amazing versus man. No, that's not the case. 63% success rate versus man. That's 29th percentile in the NFL, okay? Less than 80% success rate versus zone. Again, 60th percentile. It's fine. It's not, but it's not good. We want that to be over 80%, right? So it's not as if he all of a sudden learned how to play football, or, that quote unquote injury tainted season was a complete fluke. And that just wasn't the case. Like I think he was fine. The numbers show he was fine as a separator here in the NFL. It just wasn't great.
Right. Yeah. I wouldn't that's the thing, is that when you look back at that profile, definitely injury tainted, and he's playing in sort of a role that it just didn't play in the NFL. But the issues against press man coverage and as a true just isolated one-on-one route runner were certainly still the case, right? I mean, 29th percentile success rate versus man is not good. He only saw press on 10.3% of his charted routes. That was a concerted effort. I think that if the Chiefs watched that film and thought he would be great as our X receiver, that's the position that they would have played him in. They didn't play him in that position because I don't think he translated to that. And look, we've talked about this a lot through draft season. If you guys are new listening, we talked about this a lot, about these guys that are not collegiate separators, but move inside in the NFL and move into different roles. That's been a historic thing that's been super successful, right? Some of these guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, some of these guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's why this role change was necessary, because if he was just still, this great separator, kind of great route runner, working well in isolation, he would have played a very different role than this. I mean, like I said, 50.9% of his routes are slants, flats, and screen routes. 38.3% of his routes charted were a slant route. That is the highest in reception perception history that I've charted for a single.
Wow.
For a single player.
Wow.
I actually just realized that right now as I was looking at the historical database. That is the highest for any player. Number 2 is actually Juju Smith-Schuster. And I think that's a nice transition, because I do think his profile is very similar to a Juju type of player, especially early on in his career. And I think, Juju was a good player at his peak. I think it's funny. I was kind of lower than consensus on Juju when he burst onto the scene in 2017 and 2018. He had that monster season. To me, I was like, good player, clearly good player, but not a number one. Needs a vertical player on the outside to open up space. And then, and he was a number one, literally the number one ranked dynasty receiver for people at that time. And I just thought that was crazy because he didn't have those type of skills. Right. I think I ended up being correct on that in the long run. And now it's kind of how I view Juju now. I think people are almost too harsh on him. He was still a useful player with Kansas City in 22.
Absolutely.
Things fell apart in New England. And I think Rashee Rice, it can be a useful player for the Kansas City Chiefs. But okay, so looking back at Juju Smith-Schuster's first season, 60.9% success rate versus man, 79.2% success rate versus zone, 33.3% success rate versus press. Rashee Rice, year one, 63% success rate versus man, 79.7% success rate versus zone, and 68.2% success rate versus press. That press number, which he actually faced press a lot less often than even Juju did as a rookie receiver, that press number is actually better than Juju's.
When you go back and look at the historical database, it feels very Juju Smith-Schuster-ish. It feels very Jarvis Landry-ish when you start talking about, what this guy can do. So I'm still trying to, and I know a lot of, I think fans are still trying to wrap their minds around, this guy played X receiver and put up huge numbers at SMU. Can he do some of those things in the NFL? It just seems as if that answer is very clearly no.
No. I like that Jarvis Landry comparison a lot. So Jarvis Landry, 2014 rookie season, 62.6% success rate versus man, about 76% success rate versus zone, and 67.4% success rate versus press, while running a slant on 34.1% of his routes.
Wow.
A screen on 7.2%, and a flat on 13%. So actually, I think from a route deployment perspective, that is pretty similar to the Rashee Rice route tree. That is an interesting comparison. Yeah, I mean, that's 54.3% of his routes, screen, slant, flat. And like, I know that like we want every receiver to be the next superstar, right? And
sure.
Like, I think Rashee Rice is a really good player, but like, and I think if he becomes Jarvis Landry or Juju Smith-Schuster, that's a really good player. Like, that would be awesome. Dude, if the damn Chiefs had prime Jarvis Landry and prime freaking Juju like working in this, I mean, we saw Juju with the 22 Chiefs offense, and it was much better at time. I mean, obviously they won the Super Bowl in both seasons. They won the Super Bowl in both seasons, so we're really picking nits here. But that would be a super helpful player for that offense. So I like that Jarvis Landry comparison. I really like the Juju Smith-Schuster comparison. That's sort of the archetype of receiver that I'm looking at here for Rashee Rice. And look, like these guys, I'm not saying that Jarvis Landry, was only ever a slot receiver, but he was a majority slot receiver, right? I mean, from his rookie season on, he mostly every single season I've charted him, which is 2014 to 2022, he has been a over 50%, over 52% slot player. Same with Juju, same sort of thing, right? The lowest slot rate I've got for him was actually that year with the Chiefs at 39.3%, which is, still even fewer than Rashee Rice. And like, let's be clear, like there's a reason you want Rashee Rice in this type of role. I talk about like in space metrics a lot, right? Like, which to me, that's when I chart like that you're in the open field, you got an opportunity to break a tackle. He was in space on 62% of his targets that I charted, and he went down on first contact on fewer than half of those plays. Like we just talked about with the Devontae Smith, AJ Brown thing, like you want to get Rashee Rice in these situations where he has a chance to break tackles because that's where he can be really, really dynamic. He's not dynamic as a route runner. He's not even necessarily like an explosive, like fast player in the open field. No. But he does definitely like he's a big time like tackle breaker because he's physical, because he has some burst when he gets ahead of steam. So I think that's where he can give you the most dynamism, and that's why you want to keep him in this role.